I lived in 7 different neighborhoods from the time I was born until the time I finished high school. As a kid, I didn't understand why we were moving. As an adult, I know it was because we'd fall behind on our rent. The landlords would get fed up with us, and when it was time to renew our lease, so we would squat for as long as we could, and then we would finally move. By the time I got to high school, the moves were getting less frequent. And even as we shuffled between neighborhoods, they were much closer together. The idea of having to commute to school didn't really appeal to me, so I settled for my zoned high school. At the time, Long Island City High School, which was long for LIC, had 4,400 students. There were nearly 1,400 students in my freshman class, but only 526 people in my graduating class. The 6-year graduation rate was advertised at 55%. I didn't bother to ask what the 4-year graduation rate was at the time. LIC was also strategically located in the epicenter of 3 of the largest housing projects in New York City: Ravenswood, Astoria Projects, and Queensbridge, which was the largest in North America. While the metal detectors we walked through every morning could keep most of the weapons out of the building, they did very little to solve and resolve many of the conflicts that spilled in from the block. There were constant fights between people who lived in different housing projects, and then there was infighting amongst people who lived in the same housing projects. If you lived in Ravenswood, for example, it mattered whether you were a part of the cheese block or the yard block. Despite this household drama, I took classes, played sports, and hung out with kids across all of the different housing projects. And most of the time, things were hunky-dory. Something that was only apparent in hindsight was that the best educators in my school were really good at conflict resolution. Having a sound understanding of what conflict resolution is and strategies you can use if you find yourself in a situation where you have to resolve a conflict with a scholar or a group of scholars can significantly improve the learning environment. Besides, conflict is a natural part of any community. We often think of conflict as being negative, but there is such a thing as healthy conflict. We see those in the form of respectful debates. Conflict resolution is about addressing and managing disagreements in a respectful manner. It's about finding solutions that meet the needs of everyone involved and creating a positive collaborative atmosphere. The first best way to address conflicts within a classroom environment is to do it in the way that was originally agreed upon. One of the most important things an educator can do is start the year with creating norms for conflicts, much like the rules that are created. I've seen things like no shouting at one another, one mic, meaning only one person talks at a time, and no name calling, just to name a few. If there are norms that are already set up and agreed upon by the entire group, it's paramount that you follow them to create consistency. If you do not abide by the ones you created for the group, you're encouraging the group not to abide by them in the future, which we definitely do not want to do. If there are no norms after a conflict is resolved, is the perfect time to create them to ensure there are ground rules for future conflict. When conflicts are managed well, it strengthens relationships and promotes a positive school culture. Scholars learn that conflicts are opportunities for growth and understanding rather than obstacles. They come to see their classroom as a community where everyone works together to support each other's success. This positive culture not only enhances academic outcomes, but also fosters a sense of belonging and well-being among scholars. Besides, going through full-blown mediation training, I can share some effective strategies at resolving conflict that you're directly involved in or that you can use to navigate among the group. Some of these will sound like common sense. Unfortunately, in heated moments where emotions are at play, common sense is not so common. If you're not the subject and the conflict has escalated, the first thing you must do is stay calm. It's easy to lose your composure, but this is when you need to be the most calm, cool, and collected. Your energy will influence the reactions. Do not, for any reason, put your hands on a scholar. This is a huge non-negotiable. There are effective ways to diffuse a situation without using any physical touch. Touching a scholar exposes you to liability and could escalate an already tense situation. Next, contrary to what you may think, speak soft and slow. Separate the involved scholars. This is where your judgment is really important. This may mean different tables, different sides of the classroom, or completely different rooms. Raising your voice but quickly escalate the situation. It's really important that you separate scholars in a way that does not assume guilt or assign blame. Once the scholars are separated, allow for a cool down moment or period. Encourage deep breathing if necessary. After the scholars have gotten close to their normal temperament, proceed with curiosity and begin to investigate what happened using your active listening skills. Depending on the age and emotional maturity of your scholars, this can be done separately or together to get a shared understanding of what happened. Using your active listening skills, ask exploratory, open-ended questions like, what happened? How can we resolve this? And how can we prevent this from happening again in the future? It's important to pay attention to what the scholar or scholars are sharing and play back what you're hearing in as much of their own words as possible. After the situation has been diffused, you need to use your judgment and assign an appropriate consequence to the involved scholars. The consequences could range from an apology, a reflection paper, a phone call home, or something more elaborate. Every conflict is a learning opportunity. Focus on what the involved scholars or class can learn from the situation, and less on trying to punish the scholars, or else it would send the message that conflict is bad or should be hidden from you. If you're the subject of the conflict with a scholar or a group of scholars, everything prior to separating the scholars still applies. However, you must attempt to diffuse the situation with the scholar or group of scholars. After you've checked your mindset to remain calm, the next thing you should do is check the amount of distance between you and the scholar or scholars. Too close and you risk escalating. Too far and you risk having to raise your voice. A few feet is generally acceptable. Next, check your height. As much as possible, try to get to eye level with the scholar or scholars involved. Towering over them could trigger their fight or flight response. Proceed to use your active listening skills, speaking softly and slowly. If you sense the conflict is escalating, do not be afraid to involve another adult who can help calm the scholar down until both of you are ready to re-engage and come to a resolution. Let's play out a scenario in a 6th grade art class where there are no established norms for conflict. You have two scholars, Jose and Bianca, who are fighting over who gets to use the only red marker first. Unable to come to an agreement, they start pulling on opposite ends of the marker, and Jose, holding onto the end with the cap, pulls so hard he falls back, and the entire class starts laughing at Jose. Furious, he gets up and rips up Bianca's drawing. What do? First, stay calm. Walk over to the scene. I intentionally did not say run because that could escalate. Speaking slowly and softly, you could instruct Bianca to go to a different table or another side of the room. Then you might say to Jose, I'm going to work with both of you to come up with a solution. I will be speaking with both of you individually, and I'm choosing to start with you. After talking to Jose, you'll follow up and have a conversation with Bianca. Depending on what you learn, you'll decide whether it's appropriate to have them reshare what happened from their perspective for the other person to hear. You'd instruct them at the beginning of the ground rules, like only one person speaks at a time. You have to let the other person finish what they have to say before talking. At the end, you can ask them what they think the consequence should be for their actions. Based on their suggestions, you could take what they decide or ask them to apologize to one another or come up with something else. It's very important to ensure that the consequence fits the context. Again, we're not trying to punish, just create ownership and responsibility for our actions. This would fully conclude with an exercise with the whole class creating ground rules for future conflicts. This engages everyone and creates a learning opportunity from the incident in the classroom. Implementing conflict resolution strategies ensures every scholar feels heard and respected. By implementing these conflict resolution strategies, we can create a more harmonious and productive learning environment for all of our scholars.